How do you break into the comic book industry? 21 years after I started my professional writing career, I'm still trying to figure that one out. When I started writing in 1994 professionally, I had the goal of becoming a comic book writer. However, I have not been able to find a way to break into this industry. Pretty much, when it comes down to this industry, no one really knows the process for trying to find work in it. Do you send a resume and a cover letter to an editor? Do you send unsolicited samples to an editor? Do you send do you network with work writers and artists who are working in the industry at Comic Cons? What is the process that a creator has to follow to break into the industry? And in the year 2000, I wrote the late great Dwayne McDuffie an email asking him that very same question. And even he couldn't answer it for me. When it comes down to comics, it's like a virtual brick wall is up. Um, when it comes down to for creators accessing the work world of comics, it's just literally virtually impossible to break through. And this is, one of the things that I feel that is impeding the industry because what happens is it's easier to break into the trade publishing market, which is paperbacks and hardcovers, or to Hollywood production companies, than it is the comic book industry. Because in both of those cases, I have been able to submit work and get responses for it. When it comes down to trade publishing, it's as simple as this: you send them a one-page query letter stating your synopsis for your book and your writing background, and either they'll send you a rejection letter or they'll send you a request to read the first 50 pages or the entire manuscript. When it comes down to screenwriting, all you do is send them a one-page query letter with your log line and your background, and they'll either send you a rejection letter or a request to read the entire screenplay. And in both those processes, as hard as they are easier than breaking into your comic market. When it comes down to breaking into your comic market, it's like some sort of secret fraternal order. You have to know the right person, and they have to bring you in, and then they have to teach you the password. And that's the only way you're going to break in. When I look at comics, this approach that keeps people from coming in at the front door is really impeding the growth of the industry. The industry pretty much collapsed in 1993 after the death of Superman and the overprinting of all those comics that the speculators thought were going to be worth so much. And since then, new talent who has wanted to be a part of the industry pretty much has run up against a literal brick wall in trying to reach the people in the industry. I mean, the names of these people are just the editors and stuff for acquisitions just aren't there. There is no internship program that most people know about that they can apply for. And there's no entry level job that most people can get at one of these comic book publishing companies, whether it be Marvel, DC, Image, Boom, Dynamite, whatever you name, IDW, whatever you name them. There's no entry level for most people to access. And most people like myself who have been wanting to be a part of this industry, it's like we get tired of hitting our heads against the wall. And eventually what we do is we go and we take our work to other marketplaces. And this is what I've seen, happen so many times to so many different people. I've seen people who were, great cartoonists. What they do is they go and they start creating web comics or they start creating indie comics. And that's all because they just can't find a way to break into the industry. So they start finding other forums to start showcasing their work. Other people, who are especially writers like myself, what we do is we go into the trade paperback market and we take our concepts that we had for comics and superheroes and we turn them into young adult fiction. This is what I had to do, way back in 1999 with the character Isis here. This was originally the Isis character was originally planned to be a comic book character. But because the industry was so impossible to access and it was impossible to get in touch with people in the industry, I was forced to take this character and turn her stories into young adult fiction. And this was one of the big problems. I originally I planned this series to be a comic book series, but because the marketplace for comics was just impossible to break through, and just try to talk to someone or try to pitch this concept to someone of a goddess next door or an African American female superheroine, I found myself having to take this concept and turning it into a young adult book. And many other artists and writers probably had to do, the exact same thing with their characters because it's just impossible to access the market. And it's impossible to talk to editors or not editors at comics. I mean, it's just impossible to reach anyone. It's impossible to even get a name or an address to even ship any sort of query letter or any sort of material to anyone. And this is something that I feel that is impeding the growth of the comic book industry because the industry desperately needs new writers, new artists, and new creative people who can tell stories that relate to children and readers of all ages in the 21st century. Because what we've had in the industry for the last, I say, 20 years are people who are still stuck in the 90s as it relates to story models, story paradigms, art design, and, fashion sense, and all sorts of media. Everything is stuck in the 90s. And really, when I look at art that's outside from the indie market and from indie artists on webcomics, everything is a lot more 21st century oriented. Everything relates to people of today. And that's not being presented in today's print comics. And I feel that the industry really needs to get back and find a way to start reaching out to new, fresh talent. And they need to find a way to bring new talent in because what I see is a lot of stuff that I know pretty much looks like a comic to me. When I look at something like your Monster High, I say that's a comic. That's pretty much a comic book waiting to happen. When I look at Harry Potter, I see a comic book, in words. And I look at a lot of this young adult fiction I'm reading, and it's pretty much I could just pretty much tell from reading the premises and stuff. This was a comic, and the sad part is many of these people, probably like myself, were tired of beating their head against a wall and waiting for somebody to pick up and respond or even try to get a name of someone, and they decided to go out and take their work to another marketplace. And the sad part is, all of these concepts pretty much could have been the next big comic. It could have been the comic that revived the industry. And I think one of the big problems is that the industry is so stuck on superheroes it doesn't see that your next big comic is probably going to be either something independent, something different, something completely outside of superheroes that people don't see, what the next big comic is. And what we're seeing now, people are just taking their stuff and going elsewhere. And I see that the industry truly is suffering because everything has become so insular. Everything has just become so inside that nobody outside can get in. It's like a brick wall has been erected outside of these comic publishers that nobody can either access the material or even new creative people can't even access it in to even get work. Everything is just it's just inside, and then nothing can come outside. And that's why nobody outside wants to read the comics because nobody can relate to the material that's being produced by them. Either you have to be a lifelong diehard fan, even they are dying off. If you look at DC Comics and its New 52, and their new DCU, nobody's buying those comics. Or people are just saying, you know what, I'm just going to buy indies or outside comics because it's really speaking to me and it relates to me. And that's all due to the inability of new people to access the market. And new people have been wanting to access this market, as I said before, for over 20 years, and they just can't find a way in. They can't find an application process. They can't find a way to submit work. And they feel like, you know what, if I can't take these ideas I have and turn them into comics, what I'm going to do is adapt it and then turn it into another type of product. And long term, the industry suffers because you miss out on that next big character, you miss out on the next big concept, And people miss out on enjoying reading the comic medium because reading comics is something special. It's very unique. It's a way of a brilliant way of telling stories with pictures, and people would like to be a part of that industry. They would like to tell their stories in this unique medium. And what's happening is people aren't getting that chance because a handful of people want to keep the industry all for themselves. And the sad part is they're getting older, and the craft of comics, is getting lost. And yes, and the whole thing is that the medium, a lot of the people who are taking it up in the indie market, they're doing a great job with it. And I'm hoping that they are a bit more open and not so insular. And from what I've seen, a lot of the guys who are on the indie market, they're a lot more open about things, and they're more interested in sharing the art form. And this is what I really want to see. But what I really want to see is a structure set up at some publisher where people can learn, the craft of publishing. They can learn the model for publishing, and they have a place where they can be mentored on what makes a good story and what makes this craft so great, because that's what's going to lead to people going from an artist who likes to draw to becoming a craftsperson who understands things like perspective and proportion, and you know what facial expressions work at conveying emotions, and where to put a certain plot point and things like that. This is what you're going to learn when you're being mentored. And this is what you learn, about procedures and procedural things like getting work done by a certain deadline, or, how things relate to other parts of the schedule, how having your book on come out at a certain time relates to other people's books, and how it relates to that time, and how it relates to the reader. And we really need that type of internship program or that type of mentoring program that brings, creative people into comics so that they can have an entry point to break in. We need entry level jobs, where people can learn the whole overall process of comics. But as it stands right now, over the last 20 years, there has not been any of this at all. There used to be this in trade publishing. There used to be this type of job in screenwriting, and there used to be these type of internships in trade publishing and screenwriting. I know that they're still going on in trade publishing. I don't know about screenwriting, but they're out there. They have classes for screenwriting, but when it comes down to comics, there is no entry point, and that's what's leading to comics almost being impossible for readers to access, because there is no entry point for creators to come in, and then there is no entry point for readers to come in. And people at the top don't see how the two correlate with each other, and how this is leading to this industry never coming out of this almost 2 decades long slump, and getting comics back in the hands of new readers, because this is something that's very important. In order for a medium to survive, you need new readers, and you need them in large numbers in order to pull a profit on a publication. And you really need those new readers. And the industry, as it stands right now, is so insular that people just can't access the job market. And that means that readers just can't access the books. And that's a big problem, because, I mean, a guy like me, I sit there, I go 20 years and I still can't figure this out. I'm able to figure out trade publishing in Hollywood, but I just still can't figure out comics. That's all I have to say for this video. You can pick up um, the latest ISIS series book, ISIS Night of the Vampires, on paperback and on Kindle. This book features a great cover by Bill Walko from the comic strip The Hero Business. And the ISIS series is great reading, featuring the adventures of the goddess next door. There are other ISIS series books like ISIS Wrath of the Cyber Goddess, another action-packed adventure featuring the goddess next door. All again featuring another great cover by hero business artist Bill Walko. This book is also available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. All the ISIS series books read just like comics, and they're easy to access with easy entry points. Every story has its own beginning, middle, and end. And I believe you'll really enjoy reading the ISIS series once you start it. Again, that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.